Josh, you all right?
Hey Josh.
For this week's episode, we're joined by Elliot Lings, Senior Junior Product Developer Management at Salesfire.
Hello.
You all right? Joined by Tim Mawson, Head of Partnerships at Salesfire.
Hiya.
Richard Himsworth, CEO of Salesfire.
Sunday name, thanks.
And we are joined this week by Tim Johnson, Chief Sales Officer of Visualsoft. Thanks for joining us.
This is my first ever podcast, so I'll try not to swear and talk in CB Radio Talk over.
The official CB Radio Meetup podcast.
Roger that over.
There's the spin-off we've been looking for, CB. Done.
Digital's overrated, I find. I think analog has the warmth that we all crave. Can you just introduce us to yourself, Tim, and sort of what you're doing at the minute and what you're doing with Visualsoft?
Yeah, so I'm the CSO at Visualsoft. That's the kind of the American term, I guess, for sales director. I oversee the kind of the sales side of the business and our kind of strategy towards where we find new customers and products and so on.
So is it fair to say that you found the transition into this sort of quite, stormy period is probably understatement of the century, but have you found the transition into this quite smooth then?
COVID's a weird one for us. We're trying to be really kind of sensitive to the situation, but at the same time, we've done kind of well in it. In that, obviously, we're an e-commerce provider, so for us, we're able to work from home because we're all just pretty much techie people with laptops. And whilst the high street's closed and so on, e-commerce is obviously booming. So for us, this is really, really busy. We haven't really PR'd it a lot. We haven't gone out and shouted about it a lot because obviously there's certain sectors that are struggling. So we're working both to kind of support our clients that need it, but at the same time, support those that are seeing the upside and the growth. For those that don't know what Visualsoft is, we're essentially a full service agency. We're an e-commerce platform, and then we have the wraparound marketing services to drive digital growth, whether it's SEO, pay-per-click, affiliates, email, that kind of stuff, social.
Because I'm just to let everyone know we're recording from Visualsoft today, and I know you briefly talking about the social distancing measures you put in place.
Yeah, well, we've got the breathing space. So in terms of the size of the offices, we can work from home. So those that want to work remotely can, but those that need to come into an office, we've got the space to be able to do it in a safe way. So we have, luckily, we're in a fortunate position that we've got best of both worlds, I guess. But yeah, in terms of that transition when lockdown hit, we already did work from home. We already did people working from cafes and wherever else. Like all we really need is a laptop and an internet connection. The challenge actually for us was our customers don't work the same way. So when we've usually encouraged the staff to have face-to-face meetings with clients, get out on the road and go and see them, that's because our clients weren't used to doing things like Zoom and stuff. So we went and worked the way that they wanted to work. But I think on the other side of this, you'll find that we'll do probably less travel because I think, like my mum's 70-year-old and she's got Zoom now. So I think you'll find that people will be more receptive, I guess, to the likes of digital sessions, remote sessions, all that kind of stuff.
It's an interesting point that. Have you found that you've having to be educating clients on that type of thing as well as you've been sort of still working throughout this?
Yeah, to some extent. Like we've helped some of them get on board, but a lot of them, because I think they're doing it in their own time, like because they want to stay in touch with their own staff or their families and so on. I think what COVID's done is it's actually brought that whole industry, that kind of the remote video conference and all that kind of stuff, it's probably brought it 2 or 3 years ahead for me. I mean, the technology's been around for a long time, but the adoption rates weren't particularly high. So I think what we'll find is on the other side is in certain sectors, the situation brought them forward. So I don't think it's changed things from the natural course it was already going to be on. I actually think it's just fast-tracked it. So we're speaking to retailers now, for example, where they might be putting more into online or starting to go online now. And they would have done that anyway in 2 or 3 years down the line, but this has actually caused them to do it sooner.
So when it comes to sort of prospects and things like that, have you found yourself dealing more with the more family-run businesses that saying, right, we need to get online now?
It's certain sectors where it was hit hard. So, I mean, Rich will tell you this, like the way that we work with data, so Visualsoft are all about big data and we drill into everything. And if I could have a timeline of subsectors of retail, so if I said, right, well, we've got a category of jewellers, we've got a category of fashion retailers, we've got a category of sports and outdoors and garden centres and all sorts, you can almost line them up as to where they are versus the current world's timeline. So if you pick a fashion retailer now, they might be 5 years ahead of the average garden centre. Right. Do you know what I mean? So you can start to look and think, actually, the things that fashion retailers were doing 5 years ago are now starting to come into play for the people that were like the late adopters to the technology or slow to e-commerce. So certain sectors, we used to go to a lot of the trade shows and so on. And even as kind of recent as 2 years ago, I would speak to jewellers at the jewellery show that say people don't buy jewellery online. At the same time, we had a jeweller that had just processed 3,000 orders the day before. The myth kind of that people don't buy certain things online is that it's a myth. And I think that what's happened is in terms of our industry is where we've had a really lot of success is actually where we work with people in the sectors that might be a garden centre, for example. And actually, the technology that we've got and the strategies that we use that worked for fashion actually pretty much work as well for garden centres. But when you apply it to a garden centre, considering their market, their entire industry is years behind, you're applying kind of leading edge technology in a fashion sector to a marketplace that is still 3 or 4 years behind. So if you look at current technology now, and we're talking about virtual reality and augmented reality and all that kind of stuff, the stuff that's brand new and just coming into play for fashion, this might be 8, 9, 10 years away for some of the other sectors. So the other sectors are just getting their head around things like Klarna or loyalty programs and things like that, things that we were doing years ago.
It seems odd. It seems to have, in some ways, it's given the smaller independent a bit of fighting space again in the market. If you remember years ago, when I guess you'd have inquiries from websites where someone's working from the garage and they're number 2 in Google for the term handbags, and they're running a multi-million-pound industry off the back of it.
Yeah, they
kind of got eradicated over time by basically Google weeding them out. But there's almost that's kind of coming back a little bit with some of the smaller independents.
I'll tell you where that's coming from, though, Rich. I think that's what that is years ago we were so reliant on SEO that people didn't look at the likes of social for strategy. So you're right. Google, when it did the Panda update and so on, it heavily rewarded these kind of highly profile businesses that had high page rank scores. So it meant it got harder for the smaller guy that could never compete on a link strategy level. So you were never going to get the same volume or quality of inbound links to a local retailer compared to what House of Fraser was getting or whatever that might look like. What I think's changed is SEO can work well for the smaller retailer if you go niche, so you don't try and pick your battles against big generic keywords.
Yeah.
But actually, where I think the smaller boutiques and the smaller companies have been able to come in and get market share is via social. So when I look at what I get advertised in terms of Instagram and things like that, I get hits by small retailers. The majority of adverts I actually see aren't from these massive national brands, household names. It's independent brands, it's independent retailers.
Yeah.
And I actually think that's how they're getting into the market. They're not going down the SEO route. I think they're actually going down other routes to market that allows them to compete on an equal level playing field. I think, obviously, Google have recently announced that shopping's going to be free. Back in the day, Rich, when we had Frugal. We knew what Frugal was. It was inbuilt into every site we ever launched because it worked. The site would go live and you'd start getting orders day one.
It was immediate leg up, wasn't it?
Yeah, and now that's coming back. You're still going to have the big players that have got big budgets to put advertisements around it and so on. But it is giving the smaller retailers that chance actually to get on and get the brand out there. And I think where small retailers can do well online is the small enough to be able to be agile, but also small enough to be personal, so they can put more effort into kind of maintaining their brand, their tone, their like everything that business is about, without having to go through bureaucratic layers of what a big corporation has.
One thing that has been touched on a few times actually when we've talked to people, the Shopifys and to a certain extent sort of Facebook store and Instagram store and stuff like that have their place and they have their purpose on boarding people and getting people into the e-com ecosystem, for lack of a better term. How easy do you find it taking those stores and then putting them onto a more focused platform like yourselves? How do you sort of level them up?
We have a qualifying question. It's going to sound awful, but we try and find out whether or not you're serious. So the vast majority of, and I'm not going to slag Shopify off, I think it's brilliant for the right people, but the vast majority of people that use Shopify, and don't take my word for it, look at the stats. The amount of stores that they've got that turn over next to nothing is ridiculous. So the majority of people that have a Shopify store aren't turning over money. It's hobbyists, it's people that want to work from the bedroom, and it's a sideline for them. It's very much similar to the likes of WooCommerce, where it's pretty much it's a plugin for your blog, and it has its place. So for the people that want a DIY solution, they're not trying to take over the world or corner the market. They just want to have a little store there that kind of ticks away, and they can pat themselves on the back and say, "I've got a website, and I can do a little bit of pocket money through it," or whatever. Like the majority I'm not saying everybody, but the majority of people on those sort of DIY platforms are hobbyists. They are not serious retailers. Where we kind of come in is we work with them normally second time around. So normally if you've outgrown one of them solutions or you've decided that you've got a taste for it now and actually you want to go bigger, you don't want it just to be a hobby, you want it to be a full-time thing, a bigger thing. That's normally when you then come to us because you say, actually, I've outgrown this solution and I need more technology. Or more than not, it's actually about the strategy and it's the marketing. So having a website, it's not field of dreams. Like you get a website, it's not like I've got a website now, it's going to generate all this revenue for me and I'm going to go and sit on a beach and process the orders. Like that is not, even though they sell it that way, that is not the dream. That's the dream, yeah. But ultimately, without a marketing strategy, a website is basically a brochure that's in your drawer. So if you think about it, like, and I would say this to my clients, try and think about what you would do in the real world. Digital isn't that complicated. How would you approach it as a retailer? So if you get a website, it's the equivalent in mail order of having a catalogue. Now, a mail order business will tell you, if you don't have a marketing strategy and a distribution strategy for the catalogue to get it in front of customers, having a catalogue is pointless. And it's the same with a website. Having a website without a marketing strategy is pointless because if nobody's going to find it, no one's going to come and shop.
Yeah,
it's the same.
It's a shop without footfall, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's the same on a high street. So if you've got a physical store that isn't, because you don't want to pay high premium rates and everything, in the middle of, I don't know, a shopping mall, it's out in the middle of nowhere, unless you drive a marketing strategy to get footfall into that store, whether it's radio, TV, print or whatever, then it's just an empty shop without customers. And that's how you've got to look at it. So when you get a website, all well and good, go and set yourself up a Shopify store, go and set yourself up a WooCommerce store. But actually, at some point, unless you are already a marketing expert or a retail marketing expert, you're going to need to hire in. And there's a lot of people out there. You don't need to go to Visualsoft. There's a lot of alternatives. But you need to hire in somebody that's actually going to give you the strategy, give you the guidance of how you then get people into that site. Because you've got to get the footfall. And that's where a lot of these stores fall down. They can build a store because it's click, click, click. I've put a nice promo on. I've put my logo on. Then what?
That's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Scary jump to make as well for a lot of people.
So what we do is our solution's called Shared Success. I won't give it the big plug, but we partner. So what we do is we do essentially a revenue share model where if you get good results, we get paid more. If you get poor results, we get paid less. And it aligns us to kind of the goals and the strategy to drive growth and drive success. So for us now, when we actually go out and sell our solution, it's actually more of a qualification process to qualify them out. Because we don't want the hobbyists, we don't want people that haven't got marketing budgets, we don't want people that have got unrealistic expectations. Because when you're actually then partnering with them, they're going to be a nightmare for the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years if you bring on the wrong customers. And that's it.
It's a tough one because you have those people on those smaller, say it's a Facebook shop, it was a fan page or something that's turned into a shop all of a sudden. You've got their support and you've got their sort of their channels and their advertising channels there where you're pumping money into it. But after that, you're left on your own a bit, aren't you? If you want to take it up a notch, and like Alice Hall mentioned last time we spoke to her, she was fine on Shopify, I think it was, until all of a sudden she needed to get serious about her SEO, I think, and then turned very quickly into a bit of a nightmare for her, I think.
And Shopify has solutions for that, by the way. So if you wanted to ramp up and go to Shopify Plus or whatever and go up the rank, they do have bigger solutions for bigger retailers. But the big, massive piece of the puzzle we're missing there is that's just software.
Yeah.
So we've got Visualsoft, for example, we've got VS3. We've got the equivalent of Shopify. We've got an e-commerce platform called VS3. It's just software. So all that's actually going to do is that's the engine that's going to power it. But it's actually the people that make a difference. So Shopify in isolation, without a marketing strategy, without e-commerce experts, without people that are going to drive footfall and show you how to use the software, is no different to any other e-commerce software. And I think I used to liken it to, if, say, for example, you were going to hire somebody to write you an article, you don't really care about whether they're going to use Microsoft Word or OpenOffice or whatever it might be. You care about actually the caliber of the person using the software.
That's interesting.
That's the same as us. It's not about the software. The software does exactly what it needs to do. So when you need our system to do something, we can plug the optional modules in, we can integrate it into third parties. But the truth is, it's actually the people that are using the software that make the difference. It's all those years' expertise. It's specialists in each of the areas. It's big data to be able to know where you need to push your budgets and so on. And I think for a hobbyist, you don't care about all that stuff because it's just a website on the side. But you're right. Well, Alice has said there, the minute she took it seriously, she'll have realised I need more than just a bit of software that I'm running myself. I need either a team of people, or I need an expert, or I need a something. Even with Shopify, if you go to Shopify and say, I want a website, they'll normally introduce you to a separate company that will design and onboard and
like an agency.
You'll work with an agency. Yeah. I think that's where a lot of
Yeah, right.
retailers get it wrong. They don't realise that actually the e-commerce platform is just one element of it. You've then got to have multiple relationships with different people to bring it all together.
Yeah, you could see that with Alice last week, where she's constantly full of ideas to give her that extra leverage over the competitors. It's like quirky little ideas to do with Instagram. How she mentioned stuff to do with like the bringing models for the date, and also make the space really quirky so that they'd actually take their own shots and share them naturally themselves. And it was always thinking these little ways, because everyone's got access to, if you've got budgets, everyone's got access to PPC. Everyone's got access to, everyone's doing SEO and things. Everyone's got, well, I dare say, similar level of e-commerce solution. So it's these little quirky ideas really that are setting them apart.
Would you say this has changed over the past 10 years? Because years ago, technology was actually quite a difficult thing to do. And actually the market was pretty...
I'd say so, yeah, I think
I feel like the technology has caught up now to a point where it's actually quite good.
I think the platforms, there aren't, you can't look at one of the cart platforms now and say it's fundamentally flawed. I mean, we used to look at cart platforms where the entire site just had one URL. It was fundamentally flawed from the ground up. Like just be garbage. This random
back in the day,
hieroglyphics written through the URL.
When we started, and Rich will tell you, your website was hosted on your laptop, and if your laptop got stolen, your website went with it. It was stored locally.
We've lost the website.
Literally. Like
that was actually quite surprising. I've forgotten the name of that. Oh, you remember the name?
Actinic.
That was it. Yeah. And then it was a lot of the inquiries that were porting away from those, because they actually realised that actually I'm now running a £10 million turnover business from my laptop. They didn't like the idea of going kind of cloud-based. They got, I think it was, there was something else came along. Was it Creloaded or something? I think. Might be wrong there. Something else came along.
OS Commerce, maybe back in the day.
They tried getting them onto the cloud, and they just didn't want to. They were just stuck on they just liked their own thing.
You must have a horror story from those days.
Oh, there's plenty.
All right, okay, I'll take the hint. I'll leave that one.
It's interesting as things have moved forward, though, because actually you see a lot of the new software that is coming out is actually more focused on marketing. So there's so many marketing products that have come out over the past 4 or 5 years, and tools like ours, like CRO tools, which focus a lot more on the marketing and the conversion rate, as opposed to the actual.
A lot of it's to automate processes, isn't it, as best as possible. So there's things like Hootsuite and things like that. They are to automate and, I guess, keep overheads down, keep it so that you haven't got to be employing a dozen staff to be doing
It's interesting that. Do you find that with the marketing stuff being built more into these dashboards and stuff like that, Tim, do you find you get people coming to you with more of a taste for marketing than they maybe did before?
You know what I find, Josh, is they normally come to us and often they go, I'm not doing Facebook advertisement, it's a waste of money. And we're like, that's crazy. Why do you we have these examples of how phenomenal and how powerful it is. And we say, why do you think that? And they go, well, I did it myself. I set it up and I burned through my budget in like a day. And because they've then set it up wrong and they've had a negative experience, they can sometimes be harder then to turn around and convince them that there is a way you can make a success of it. You just did it wrong. Wow, okay. And we've had this before where like sometimes you'll be at an exhibition, you get chatting to somebody and they'll say to you, oh no, like you can't sell my particular product online, even though we've got clients that are selling a ton of that stuff. But that's all. We tried it. It didn't work. It doesn't work for our particular product. And what it actually is they didn't go with the right provider. So they might not have had a good marketing strategy, or they might not, a particularly good e-commerce platform. Because they've had a negative experience, they then rule out that opportunity because they think, actually, we tried that, it didn't work. And I think sometimes, and this is what I find a lot of the time, it's the younger generations that are coming through and the more, I guess, born into technology. Like my daughter's like 11-year-old, but she's better on an iPad than where I am. So for these people that are already brought through and it's not all new world to them, I think sometimes where we find the companies actually changes, it's where one generation moves out of the business and a new generation comes in and they just approach it differently and they try things differently. And it's the same product ultimately, selling to the same kind of market, but it's just a different approach. Embracing, I guess, the technology.
Seen it a lot, haven't we, with family businesses where the father runs the traditional shops and then it's for the son or daughter to take over. They get the website arm of the business up and running.
We've seen that we've seen that firsthand a lot of the time. So I think sometimes it's just actually them having the trust, having been burnt once or trying something and failed. It's having that trust and that confidence to try something new or try again. But you're right. There's a lot of technology out there now, Elliot. There's lots of stuff that you can plug into your sites that do a lot of smart things and get conversion rates up and so on. But again, unless you've got the right people that are advising you around you, it's like you've got too much choice now.
Yeah, no consultation at all.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised even at kind of, we sometimes, and it's wrong, but sometimes we think it's common sense. So because probably the people on this call, like we know the difference between one platform and another. We know the difference between CRO and what will work and affiliates and so on. You assume that the retailers know this stuff as well, and they don't. And I was at the e-commerce expo last year, and I got chatting to a house, I'm not going to name drop them, but a household brand. And when they came up to me, they couldn't decide on a payment gateway. And in that hall, there must have been 20 different payment gateways to pick from. And when I asked him which ones he'd been drawn to the most, he was about to make completely the wrong selection of which gateway was right for them. And when we got chatting about it, obviously we don't sell payment gateways, but I could almost act impartially and say, right, well, based on the clients that we've got that sell to the same target market that you've got, I can tell you now, this is the one you should be talking to. Now, that particular, he was a seasoned e-commerce manager working at a big brand, but when they're in your own little bubble, and you're only looking at what you're doing, how do you know that this is the best gateway and that's the best? Like, all the gateways are telling you they're the best gateway and they can cater for everything that you need. How do you know which one to go with? So I think when you're on your own and you've got these DIY solutions and you have got this access to all these different payment gateways, all this different tech, I actually think it's quite hard then to see and decide, because you've got too much choice. It's like, which one is right for me? And I think that's when you either need a good partner or you need a really good e-commerce manager, which are pretty hard to find, or you need some sort of kind of consultant. You need someone that's done it before to say, actually, what you need is this. And I think as a retailer, the best thing you can do is speak to other retailers. So in e-commerce specifically, like we'll host regular events. So we had like VS Fest and things like that. And clients can get together and speak to each other. And I just think like what you guys are doing here with the likes of Alice coming on and so on, like retailers should speak to each other more. It's not kind of the cutthroat, we're up against each other. Like, it's not like that nowadays.
Yeah,
like you can work with each other, you can help each other, you can share best practice. And there's loads of stuff out there on the internet that you can find. But
I think what we forget, kind of being either agency or, on the distributor side of what we do, I think we sometimes forget that these retailers, they don't actually know what's going on wider. We can see everything that's going on. You can see all the trends. You can see what's working and what's not to the nth degree. And they don't. They say, you could argue, they see their own business and potentially where the e-commerce manager was last. And that's all they're privy to in terms of the actual stats.
But who do you trust? So you're on Shopify, and Shopify's default gateway is Stripe or whatever. Like, who's going to tell you there's a better alternative? Or who isn't? Who's going to confirm that it is the right one? Or is it just one that was baked in? So because you've got that much choice, it's, well, how do you know which one's the best one? Even when you're working with a provider. So I'll give you a real live example of this. We have lots of different plugins for our platform. Now, in the olden days, if you go back like 10 years ago or whatever, the after-sales teams that we employed were commission-based. So they would always try and advise the best thing for the client. But ultimately, if you've got an A and a B, and if you sell A, you get paid this, and if you sell B, you get paid the other, like you're going to influence, you're going to be drawn by the money, potentially what's in the best interest of you personally, not what's in the best interest of the customer. So when we brought in Shared Success, what we actually did was we said, no, if we base it on the success of the client, therefore, if we grow our clients, then all the features are kind of included, they're all free. You recommend the right features for the client that needs it. And if they get success on the back of that, then we'll reward you. If they don't, we won't. It then aligns you to that. So I think sometimes there's that much advice out there, and a lot of it's skewed. Do you know what I mean? I think like a lot of it, it's you'll get an advice from a consultant, but and again, Rich will tell you this: the consultant might actually be on a backhanded gift of 3 particular providers. So they'll always recommend the same 3 particular providers rather than going whole of market. And it's no different to maybe as a mortgage provider. You might go for a mortgage and they're not whole of market. They're going to edge you towards the products that they might get paid the most commission on. So I just think you've got to look to speak to each other, speak to your peers, speak to partners. I think leverage the relationship. So I'm pretty sure if I was a SalesFire customer and I rang one of your team up today and said, I'm thinking about doing this, that, or the other, like which would be the best gateway on your recommendations or which would be the whatever, you guys would probably give them the advice and say, well, if it was us, we'd go this way. That's what we would do. We would just put ourselves in their shoes and say, well, if it was our business, we would do this.
It's refreshing to hear that, because I know, again, harking back to when we last talked to Alice, she said one of the biggest gripes at the minute was when she was talking to these different agencies, instead of being pushed in the right direction, she was just getting the last proposal completely torn down. Instead of saying, they did get this right, actually, they got this right. She said they were just
Negative sales, wasn't it?
Yeah, negative sales, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but when, obviously, you've got to get to a point where when everything's getting blown out of the water, who you turn to then? Because everyone's saying everyone else is wrong. It's going to come back full circle eventually. And then if everyone's wrong, who are you going to go with?
And again, we encourage people to speak to our clients. We encourage people to take the time. Like you shouldn't feel backed into a corner to sign up for something. You should take your time. And we joke about this, and ultimately, with e-commerce, you're looking for a long-term partner. You're not looking for a one-night stand. You're looking for something where you're going to work with them on an ongoing basis for a long time. Now, once you get your head around that, you need to get less hung up on the initial kind of, I'm going to get built in 3 weeks and then I'll ring them again if I need something. Like, that shouldn't be the relationship.
Yeah.
It should actually be, well, what does the next 2 years look like? Can we start looking at where that growth might come from and blah, blah, blah. It should be an ongoing thing. Now, at that point, if you're going to pick a provider that you're going to be with for 2 or 3 years, you need to make sure that you pick the right one. Same again, you wouldn't necessarily rush into marrying the first date you go on or whatever. Like, you should take the time, do your research, do your due diligence, find out how long they've been in business. Yeah, you need to do your homework, speak to customers. And Rich will tell you that 80% of the work we get is failed projects. The vast majority of inquiries we get are people that went somewhere else and it went wrong.
That's interesting.
Now, when you get speaking to these people, often they've made the same mistakes as each other. So like, they didn't do the due diligence. So we actually produced a guide that was how to pick a provider, how to choose an e-commerce provider. And all it actually was a list of all of the things that the previous projects we've done that went wrong, where they had a data breach, or they went with a company where they only had one developer and that developer left. So they had no developers and they couldn't get any support. They went with a company that was in its first year of trading. And as you well know, the majority of companies don't last longer than the first year of trading. So they've gone with a provider that isn't in business anymore. So actually, when you start to list in kind of, this is the due diligence you should make when picking an e-commerce platform and picking a partner, like, it's easy to avoid those mistakes when you know what you're looking for. But if you're not speaking to other retailers and you're not working with a consultant, it's like, where do you get that help from? Where do you get that information from that says, make sure you do this, make sure you do the other, make sure you do this?
So say if
when you go back to that SEO as well, this is I'm on my soapbox, but when it comes to SEO as well, what you don't want to be doing is re-platforming a lot. There's underlying costs in the damage it'll cause your SEO, but the retraining of your staff, the project cost of build, like, you shouldn't be thinking, well, I'm going to go with a platform, and if it doesn't work out, I'll change it in 6 months, or I'll change it whenever. Like, you need to be picking one that you think you're going to be on with for the duration.
Yeah, someone who's going to know how you started out. And
I think it's something you can scale with, something you're not going to outgrow.
Yeah,
it's not a regulated industry, is it? Really, still to this day, it's, you could literally set up and pretend you're an expert in SEO, PPC, that you've got the best platform.
It's a minefield.
There's nothing stopping it.
I was chatting to a guy last
week. You see them
week.
splinter off, don't you? You see them from, like, established companies like yourselves. You see them splinter off, start their new thing, and then they'll splinter again and start their own thing as well. It's almost like the knowledge and expertise. It can't be there because it's not. There aren't the years going into it. It's literally
no.
It's almost like less kind of experience and expertise as each one of these companies kind of splinters out.
I had a guy reach out to me last week on LinkedIn. I get these quite a lot, actually. And he was in the market for an SEO provider, and he said, I've had these quotes, would you have a look at them for us? And I had a look and I said, well, this one's interesting, that one's interesting. Now, one of them that was the cheapest was clearly what we call behind closed doors, a churn and burn. So it is literally someone that will sign you up for a very, very short-term contract with no work, no output. Because with SEO, because it can take 6, 9, 12 months beyond to get results, it's easy to kind of fake the work for a short contract period.
You buy yourself
do nothing. Yeah, you buy yourself 6 months while you find your next, for want of a better word, victim. And there's a lot of companies that do this. And ultimately, if you're just buying on price without doing due diligence of saying, well, can I speak to your customers and can I do this? Then you're going to fall for the likes of churn and burn, where you're going to be literally getting no work for 6 months or 9 months or whatever. And at the end of it, they'll go, yeah, it never worked out, never mind, see you later. But what we actually did was just moved on to the next one and the next one and the next one. And unfortunately, like you said there, it's like, it's not regulated. And there are companies out there that do have that model. That's just what they do. So you've just got to pick the right provider, I think. You've just got to do your homework and make sure you pick the right one. It's
quite scary, that, because it's quite shocking to me how prevalent that must be for when we talk to people, especially who've actually been burnt by this short-term SEO. People find it quite a tough pill to swallow, don't they, when it comes to actually getting back on board with it?
I suppose it comes from that whole trust element again, where people think that if you approach someone and you say, look, I'm an SEO expert, I can do X, Y, Z, and I'll get you to number one at Google, which is something you see on like LinkedIn all the time, is people promising that. But to actually deliver it and deliver it well, and as Tim says, the cheapest option is not the best option. It's the person who's going to give you the best ROI, or the person who's actually going to look after you. And people don't look down that road, I don't feel.
I think it's quite easy, Tim, to do the maths as well. Like for SEO, you know yourself, it's time intense. So it's actually somebody that's going to put a certain amount of hours in every month to do that work. So if you were to do even the simplest of maths and say to that person that gives you a quote for SEO, what's your day rate? So someone says to you, I can do your SEO for £100 a month. And you say, out of interest, what's your day rate? And they say £500. You can quickly work out how little time they're going to be spending on your campaign. And when you then look at who you're trying to outrank and compete against and how much time they're spending on their campaigns, all of a sudden you realise that you're completely wasting your time.